whopping $250,000 for something you could have prevented with a bit of foresight and care. That's exactly what happened to CVS in Ohio, and it's a wake-up call for pharmacies everywhere. So in an event that shook the pharmacy world, Ashley Anderson, a dedicated pharmacist at CVS, tragically passed away due to what many believe was excessive work stress and understaffing. This heartbreaking story emerging from Ohio has cast a harsh spotlight on the chronic staffing issues that are plaguing pharmacies across the country, and we're all aware of these. We're seeing pharmacies shut down, reduce the number of hours, and yet the staffing shortage isn't getting better. I've even heard about people offering and companies offering $50,000, $100,000 to work, and you're still having problems. CVS's hefty fine by the Ohio Board of Pharmacy of $250,000 wasn't just about the tragedy of Ashley. It's a statement against the systemic issues within large pharmacy chains. So the message is clear. Ignoring the well-being of pharmacists and the operational standards can lead to severe consequences. So what can small pharmacies do to avoid finding themselves in this hot water with state pharmacy boards? So first of all, it's about recognizing the importance of your staff's well-being. Overworked and stressed pharmacists are more likely to make mistakes, and this will lead to dangerous, if not fatal, outcomes. Implementing proper staffing levels, ensuring adequate breaks, fostering a supportive work environment is non-negotiable. Compliance with your state laws is a given. So this is where a food and drug lawyer comes into play. We specialize in the nuances of pharmacy operation and the laws, and we can be your first line of defense against potential legal issues. We offer invaluable advice on compliance and help in navigating these complex state and federal regulations, and can again act as a mediator between your staff and your regulatory bodies. With our expertise, pharmacies can develop strategies not only to avoid fines, but to actually excel in providing safe and effective services to their communities. So don't wait for a crisis to rethink how your pharmacy operates. Take proactive steps today. Ensure that you're not compliant with just the regulations, but you're actually a leader in pharmacist well-being and patient care. Consider consulting with Kulkarni Law Firm to safeguard your business and your team. Remember, in the field of pharmacy, prevention is always better than the cure, both for your patients and for your business. In the end, let's remember, it's not just about avoiding fines. It's about setting up a new standard in pharmacy care that honors the legacy of pharmacists like Ashley Anderson. Let's make a change starting now.
Hey, what do you know? It's This Week in Pharmacy. I'm your host, Todd Ure, founder of the Pharmacy Podcast. Great to be here. What another week, another busy week for all of you out there. My heroes, pharmacists, pharmacy technicians. The work that you do is so incredibly important. And the work that we do in documenting and telling stories about your success is also important. And that is something that I want to talk to you about right now before we get into the show. If you are a technician, if you are a pharmacist and things are happening in your area of pharmacy, whether that is the setting, our independent community pharmacies, our chain pharmacies, long-term care specialty, if there's something that you're interested in sharing that can really help to educate and entertain our listeners, please reach out to me. My email is easy to remember. It's my last name, Uri at pharmacypodcast.com. Once again, that's EURY at pharmacypodcast.com. I'm excited about today because I get to introduce a new team member that actually we've already introduced you to. He was actually part of one of the very first TWIRx This Week in Pharmacies that we did, but he is officially part of our team now as of Monday, February 12th, was it?
Yes.
And I want to welcome Kevin Jones to This Week in Pharmacy and to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
It's nice to be a part of the family.
All right, let's just right out of the gate, we're going to make you as uncomfortable and we're going to make this as awkward as possible. No,
we'll do our
best.
best.
A little nervous. But tell us about yourself. Like, what is it that you're in now, what is your title?
So we've expanded the role to be sales and operations manager. Some of the folks who are clients out there and listening and other podcast hosts from our network are used to working with Rachel Medlock.
Yep.
And now it'll be me. Since Todd put out the email address, mine's super easy too, just jones at pharmacypodcast.com. And you can reach me. Anything associated with sales, operational issues, anything about building podcasts, any of the podcasts you're already working on, that's going to go through me from now on. And background side, I have a background in education, both public schools and collegiate. I have a background in technology that is stretched over an unbelievable number of years, and that's a part of the thing I bring to the plate. And I've also been a training manager, a quality assurance manager, high levels of organizational skills. We're going to bring that into some new ideas when it comes to PPN, and the fun, friendly side of the what I say my favorite pharmacy cheerleader over to my left, and try and enhance everything that you've already experienced, but then also try and gain some new initiatives throughout this year when it comes to new ideas, new content, new sponsorships, in order to build the network even farther.
I think it's important that we continue to deliver content that is adjacent and parallel and supportive of what pharmacists need in order to move forward in their careers. So having you understand learning and understanding education is huge, because we're going to have some very special partnerships, which you've already started to build with pharmacy schools. Kevin has done some consulting work for our publication, Pharmacy Podcast Network, and he actually has been at several events, including Duquesne University had a special event that happened last year, and I think they had a fusion of law and some of their politicians show up and Congress people, and you did an excellent job. We heard some feedback from Duquesne University that really liked your involvement. So I think we're going to be headed down. We're going to be headed to more colleges throughout the area. I'd like to hit up WVU more often, and a shout out to Mark Garofoli down there, as well as Dr. Petros, who is the dean. We want to get in touch with, obviously, Pitt School of Pharmacy, who just had a show with Mark Fulton from Framework Focus, and really expanding how the future of pharmacy is going to be very different, and is becoming very different. And that's going to be driven by these P2s, P3s that are in school right now, who are my future bosses and your future bosses, and who we'll be working with, and how that's going to change, and what that means for the profession. I want to give a shout out to Pitt and Duquesne University. We just attended on Thursday of this week, just yesterday, an event with them. I thought that was wonderful to be down there and being around them. I always like being around the pharmacy students.
And what we understand very clearly is that's the next generation of listener, and we want to make sure that we're bringing content that they need, but also starting to work with any opportunities to have continuing education come through to them on a podcast, so that their 20 minutes on the treadmill can actually be a little bit more productive than just listening to fluff.
That's right.
And the exercise their mind and their body simultaneously. We understand that they're lifelong learners. We understand that all PharmDs still have continuing education responsibilities throughout their career. And we want to make sure that, all of our clients, existing and future, understand that podcasts are where people already are. And so we want to make sure that we're in a position so that they understand this is the way to deliver content to them.
Yep. Today's theme is networking, the power of networking. You and I have both had extremely deep backgrounds in using our networks to forward not only our own careers, but more importantly, the organizations that we were committed to at the time, and then pulling them into networks. My career in pharmacy started in 2004. I'm celebrating my 20th year in pharmacy this June, and networking has been the number one aspect to helping me form relationships that to this day I still have, based on the sincerity of them. And I think that a lot of that is lost in some ways because of the use of social media, as well as the use of texting and email, creates a barrier between the two people that are in communications, or the multi people that are in communications. Whereas I don't want to sit here like a big grandpa and say, back in my day, We didn't have that interwebs.
Well,
But
sadly, I'm the one with the gray in the beard.
but I do want to say that a combination of topics that we're going to be talking about today are very important for our pharmacy pharmacist professionals, our technicians, our pharmacy students. So, and we want to hear back from you. We want to hear what you think the most effective ways to network are, as well as keeping the sense of trust and sincerity up, which I think is paramount.
And, we need to move into a future where we understand that LinkedIn is not the only method of networking.
Correct.
And it's a great way to follow up on networking. It's a great way of storing the information that you're gathering while you're networking. But there's a little bit more to it than that.
True. All right. Before we get into today's topic, I want to talk about news of what's happening this week in pharmacy. Well, all right. So last week, we were talking about Ashley Anderson, who was a pharmacist that passed away in at a CVS, and she wasn't able to take a break, or at least she didn't feel that she was able to take a break and go to the local emergency room and a quick clinic. And this week, which just came out on February 13th, the father of Ashley Anderson, who was very upset with the response that CVS made to the story that made national news, said that he believes it was, in his words, corporate garbage, which is the response which was led by a public relations effort that we all read. And I'm sure that you've read. If you haven't, we will have links to this story in the show notes so that you can link back to that. But we just got done saying being sincere. I mean, if you're there, does our corporations perfect? The answer is absolutely not. Will every company led by human beings be making mistakes? The answer is yes, of course. But when you make mistakes, how can you show the public your sincerity? How do you show the public that, hey, we made a mistake, things happened? And I know that liability comes into it. And I think that's probably a whole nother can of worms that they're going to try to break out based on what's happening behind the scenes. It's really none of our business. It's between the family and the corporation. But above all, pharmacists and pharmacies are to keep the public safe. And this was about a public safety issue. It was about, does the pharmacist that's on staff have enough time to use the restroom, get a drink, go get some lunch, have enough coverage in order to answer questions that are being lobbed at them from the counter, or people screaming at them because they're upset that their prescription isn't there. This led to the passing away of Ashley Anderson, and it was based on metrics and corporate structure that didn't equal how a human actually works in such a crazy busy environment that all of our retail chain pharmacies that are going through. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the Anderson family of being brave and becoming a ongoing gong to bang as much and make as much noise about coming up with safety standards for staffing for our pharmacists. And I'm thinking of every single staff pharmacist that's out there right now listening, whether you work for Walgreens or Kroger's or CVS or, any of them, just to know that you have to speak up for yourself first. And then you have to ensure that you surround yourself by other people that believe in those same things. And that brings up the whole pizza is not working with Bled Tanoe and Dr. Shane Jaraminski. Dr. Tanoe and I have known each other now for 2.5, 3 years. I've supported her since learning about the campaign #pizza is not working, which has really blown the doors off of this whole issue of staff and proper staff burnout and what pharmacists go through in the chain environment. I think it's going to improve. We have the Pharmacy Guild, which is a union that Shane is helping to put together. There's a lot of news that's going to come out about the Pharmacy Guild in the next couple of weeks. Shane has asked that I keep things private for obvious reasons, but I do want to say, If you don't know about Pharmacy Guild, look up pharmacyguild.org and at least get information, if not join that, if you are a chain pharmacist and work in a chain environment, because this is finally an ability to standardize things from state to state with our boards of pharmacy in play. But we have to have an organization that will oversee and hold corporations like CVS and Walgreens and all the chains to a specific level of operation and standards. And I think it's a no duh, but obviously this will create other ripples in the effect of our macroeconomics, which is the industry of pharmacy. So, by the way, we are excited. We're going to be talking about some trade shows later, so I don't want to give away some of the stuff that Kevin and I are going to be talking about. But I just want to say that Bled and Shane and Doctor of Comedy, Marie Shaw, they're going to be at the APHA 2024, along with the Pharmacy Podcast Network, leading the Locked on Pharmacy podcast. So if you're going to APHA 2024, please let the Pharmacy Podcast Network know. We would love to meet up with you, get a picture, and actually get a quote from you as to what you think of the future of pharmacy care, and being part of APHA is pretty special. All right, in line with news, we still wanted to kind of touch on, we always want to bring things to light that are still very prevalent in the markets. And one of those things is the trickle-down effect of the opioid epidemic, and it's still going on. It hasn't gone away. Kentucky sues Kroger for an alleged unsafe opioid prescriptions. And the lawsuit claims that Kroger and its pharmacies dispensed roughly 11% of all opioid pills in Kentucky. Now, the Attorney General, which is Russell Coleman, announced Monday that he's suing Kroger company, alleging that the grocer distributed hundreds of millions of opioid pills in Kentucky residents without appropriate safeguards. Kevin, when I think about the topic of opioid use disorder, and I think of the knee-jerk reaction of some of our federal as well as our state organizations that are trying to come up with a way to keep the public safe, one of the things that I don't want to happen is for the physician and the pharmacist to get clipped in treatment. I think a physician should be able to use opioids whenever he or she sees fit, and it shouldn't be governed by a state per se, bureaucracy and politics and things that kind of go into that. I think it should still be left to the physician pharmacist team, but the physician, in relying on the pharmacist to dictate the amount of opioid, the longevity of the treatment, maybe there should be some kind of titration that comes up with the pharmacist participation to take the patient down to a low dose, and then of course go to something else possibly. There are so many other substances that are coming out to combat pain, and I don't want to see lawsuits continue, because it really holds hostage some of the rest of patients that really need these substances as a sense of pain relief. And we have supported organizations throughout the years that are the patient's voice side of this, and they're saying, hey, stop making people that are dealing with pain day after day, stop calling them drug seekers, stop treating them like they have an addiction. There's such a knife's edge balance between many of those things, which once again comes back to communication with physicians and pharmacists. But wasn't happy to see this lawsuit announced this week, but nonetheless, as This Week in Pharmacy, we want to bring up some of these things to our fellow pharmacists and pharmacy technicians that are out there, and let you know that we're paying attention. All right, Alabama. The next, this comes from Montgomery Real-Time News. It says Alabama pharmacy fined $110,000 after thousands of opioid doses went accounted for. Once again, the opioid epidemic is here. It's not gone away. Federal and state organizations are going to be teethy about not keeping things in compliant and or checked. It says that King Drug, which has ceased operations as a retail pharmacy in Sampson in Geneva County. The owner, Tracy Revels McCoy, was being sued by federal prosecutors in Montgomery for alleged violations of the Controlled Substances Act. And that's just accountability. I see so many memes, Kevin, where you'll see someone make a meme where someone will drop a C2 on the floor and how frantic they get because they have to account for every single tiny little tablet. And I don't know how organizations or pharmacy owners or pharmacy operators ever think that this wouldn't be a problem in keeping account of it. And it all comes back with so many metrics and so many pharmacy management software systems that are helping to keep things accountable. But this is a major issue that's still with us, and that is the opioid epidemic and the balance between the epidemic and treatment is a fine line. And it's one that I personally think that we need to rely on our pharmacists and physicians to communicate as much as possible in delivering the treatment that our patients need. And that's really what it comes down to is our treatment and the treatment of our patients. We have conferences that we are going to talk to you about, because if you are going to these conferences, we want to network with you. Today's episode is dedicated to networking, professional networking, what that means for your career, what that means for you as a pharmacy student, and when should you start networking? Kevin, that's a good question right off the cuff. If you were to give a shout out to the profession as well as pharmacy students listening, when should you start networking?
Yeah, the networking really needs to start probably around P3, because what you're going to have multiple networking circles built throughout your career. You're going to have those that you retain from school. You're going to have those that are retained from professional organizations, and those that are retained from inside your employment. And you need to start the process of organizing those from the very beginning and then tracking them. And like I mentioned earlier, the idea of LinkedIn is an excellent way, because once you've networked with that individual, you can actually see them move from organization to organization. Yep. And then that means your networking circle has also increased by that same number. So once you start really investing yourself and you start going to conferences and you start meeting other pharmacists within the industry, you need to put yourself in that position where you're starting to track and log this information. Yep. Don't rely on your memory.
Like I do.
Well, he has to say that sometimes like you do. And don't rely on your memory, even though Todd's is absolutely stunning. We are in the position where we want to make sure that people think about networking from a broader perspective and across the length of their career. You don't know when you're going to revisit or need someone that you networked 20 years ago in your future. You just don't know.
That is so true. That is so true. I have made connections with people that I worked with back in the late 90s, and they've resurfaced. And it's not only is it wonderful to see and catch up, but it was evident that LinkedIn kept us loosely connected. And now that I'm actually doing a special project with somebody that I hadn't talked to since my telecommunications days, it's special to look back on the tracking systems like LinkedIn, for example, that give us that ability. But as you and I have referenced, we're going to talk about networking a little bit later. I do want to save some of this conversation for some of the do's and don'ts and direct messaging and reaching out for new connections and how to make it personalized. But we want to talk about that. But before we do, I want to give a shout out to Ural Pharma, because they are one of our sponsors, and we very much appreciate what they do for the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Pharmacists, meet Ural Pharma, a dynamic newcomer to the U.S. generics marketplace. Ural Pharma's current portfolio focuses on high-quality authorized generic medicines in the acute pain and endocrinology therapeutic areas. Backed by its parent company, IBSA, a multinational pharmaceutical company headquartered in Switzerland, Ural Pharma has harnessed IBSA's cutting-edge drug delivery technologies and has made great strides in expanding access to its products across the U.S. Looking ahead, Ural Pharma is committed to delivering complex generic medicines across a broad spectrum of therapeutic areas. To learn more, including important safety information about its products, visit uralpharmainc.com. That's YARAL pharmainc.com and connect with them on LinkedIn.
All right, something exciting about this week in pharmacy that we've been very proud of is the interconnection with many of our professionals out there, including people that have been part of our network for years. And Darshan Kulkarni, who is a lawyer and a pharmacist, has committed to bringing us information week after week from his perspectives as well as his research. He works with pharma companies, he works with technology companies. So this is a quick message from Darshan, and Darshan talks.
Imagine being fined a whopping $250,000 for something you could have prevented with a bit of foresight and care. That's exactly what happened to CVS in Ohio, and it's a wake-up call for pharmacies everywhere. So, in an event that shook the pharmacy world, Ashley Anderson, a dedicated pharmacist at CVS, tragically passed away due to what many believe was excessive work stress and understaffing. This heartbreaking story emerging from Ohio has cast a harsh spotlight on the chronic staffing issues that are plaguing pharmacies across the country, and we're all aware of these. We're seeing pharmacies shut down, reduce the number of hours, and yet the staffing shortage isn't getting better. I've even heard about people offering and companies offering $50,000, $100,000 to work, and you're still having problems. CVS's hefty fine by the Ohio Board of Pharmacy of $250,000 wasn't just about the tragedy of Ashley. It's a statement against the systemic issues within large pharmacy chains. So the message is clear. Ignoring the well-being of pharmacists and the operational standards can lead to severe consequences. So what can small pharmacies do to avoid finding themselves in this hot water with state pharmacy boards? So first of all, it's about recognizing the importance of your staff's well-being. Overworked and stressed pharmacists are more likely to make mistakes, and this will lead to dangerous, if not fatal, outcomes. Implementing proper staffing levels, ensuring adequate breaks, fostering a supportive work environment is non-negotiable. Compliance with your state laws is a given. So this is where a food and drug lawyer comes into play. We specialize in the nuances of pharmacy operation and the laws, and we can be your first line of defense against potential legal issues. We offer invaluable advice on compliance and help in navigating these complex state and federal regulations, and can again act as a mediator between your staff and your regulatory bodies. With our expertise, pharmacies can develop strategies not only to avoid fines, but to actually excel in providing safe and effective services to their communities. So don't wait for a crisis to rethink how your pharmacy operates. Take proactive steps today. Ensure that you're not compliant with just the regulations, but you're actually a leader in pharmacist well-being and patient care. Consider consulting with Kulkarni Law Firm to safeguard your business and your team. Remember, in the field of pharmacy, prevention is always better than the cure, both for your patients and for your business. In the end, let's remember, it's not just about avoiding fines. It's about setting up a new standard in pharmacy care that honors the legacy of pharmacists like Ashley Anderson. Let's make a change starting now.
All right. Thank you, Darshan. That was excellent. He's a great resource, and that really plays into today's theme of networking. And that is, if you are in a position, you've been a chain pharmacist for a big retail chain for, let's say, 5 years, and you just feel completely burnt out, and you want to start making some changes. Maybe you want to move into specialty pharmacy, or you want to go become a medical science liaison, or you want to go into another sector of pharmacy, long-term care, independent. If you don't have a network to start cultivating knowledge, you put out to your network, hey, I'm looking for something. And there's a timing to this, because going public right away as you're still employed isn't always a good idea to say, hey, I'm looking for something else. But if you have a network behind you that you can reach out to individuals and start saying, hey, I am looking for something else. Have you heard of anything? Are there any hospital systems opening, or is there any positions that you've hoped to interconnect with those individuals that you have in your network? There's an article that we found on LinkedIn that was titled "The Importance of Networking." I'm going to have a link to this article in our show notes. And it was developed by Pride Enterprises GB, and it goes through the importance of networking in today's market. And when I read through this, it fits anyone. It fits any job situation or any career situation. But healthcare is special in comparison to another sector that may not involve healthcare. And I think it comes back to trust. People trusting you, that you've been around, that you've shared content, that maybe you did some content development, you were a blogger, and that in and of itself folds back into networking. And that is your career development, but also your personal development is all tied back to the opportunity to do better networking. Over the years, Kevin, in your line, you were in the education world for a long time. Talk to us about your own personal networks and how you leveraged your network to actually grow in your own career.
Well, I think what you have to realize for someone who's just starting out with the idea of networking is that you're going to be networking outside of the pharmacy industry as well. That pharmacy position that you might be seeking in the future, it might actually come to you through the person who's working PR. You know, you want to build that network so that each and every person that you are working around, you know what they're good at, what they do, what their position is with their organization, and make sure that you keep that information stored somewhere. LinkedIn is naturally a very logical choice right now, because it's really not associated with quote unquote friendship. It's professionalism and you seeking out other professionals. And it doesn't need to just be all PharmDs, right? And so as you meet the doctor, even your own personal doctor or other doctors that you have contact with, you want to be networking with them as well, because maybe they're in the meeting that they hear something that they say, oh, wow, that's information we need to get to Todd.
Yep.
And also networking provides you with that food for thought, that ability to work with people who you wouldn't normally be working with. They're not someone you're going to be hanging out with as a friend, but professionally, they're getting your juices flowing when it comes to what you want for your next step and your next level.
Yep.
I think that the biggest fear for someone like me is talking to people and having them not realize that you're preparing for 5 years from now with a network. You're preparing for 10 years from now. And you don't know what your career is going to look like across a 40-year time span. So you need to put yourself in a position where you're constantly chipping away at that ability to say, do I have the people around me so that if I had a question about something, that I could actually contact them and feel comfortable asking them, and they would actually feel comfortable giving me some insight and information. That's what a network really is. And I think that's what someone who's just getting started in the idea of networking doesn't realize, that every single person you meet, they may, I mean, I've heard, people in their 30s saying, well, I'm hesitant to do that because they're not my friend. Well, we're not talking about friends here. We're talking about networking. Yep. And it's something different. It's a level of professionalism where you know that you can reach out to that person and remind them briefly of where you met and when you met, and that they'll actually be in a position where they'll offer you some help.
And I think when we start to differentiate between our personal life and personal networks versus our professional, I think that the tools that you're using, for example, everyone listening, I certainly hope you know that you're not really supposed to go to LinkedIn and put up a bunch of pictures of your kids from a Christmas party that you attended and then make comments about that Christmas party. Although I have seen personal things shared, but it is tied back to their profession. Dr. Jenna Quinn, for example, who's the Pediatric Pharmacist Review host. Jenna has shared pictures of her beautiful daughters. And a matter of fact, one of her daughters went to the Pennsylvania Pharmacists Association meeting with her. And she did a presentation on polypharmacy of cascade prescribing and how things can run amok with pediatricians maybe not paying attention to what's going on, or multiple pediatricians. And it was a great presentation. And her daughter, when she came off the stage, she whispered to her daughter, "How do you think I did?" And her daughter's like, "That was incredibly boring, Mom." And, just kind of like told her the way it was from the children's perspective. So that post that she posted, a picture of her, that made sense because it was tied to the profession. But using your social media tools for exactly what they are, what did I just say? Tools
Mhm.
will help you in your network, but that cannot be it. You just said at the beginning of the episode about networking, don't rely just on social media as your
Yeah.
network. It's a communications tool. You should be attending events. You should be going to professional organizations that might be in your area, your state association, for
Yeah.
example. All of combining personal networking, transitioning to professional networking, and then knowing how to mix in person versus online versus social media versus email versus the special secret sauce for me is gratitude and thank you. I give to my network and to the people in my network before I ever expect anything back.
Yeah.
And I think that there's an element to giving versus getting, because I will receive in LinkedIn in my own messages requests from people I've never heard of before. Sometimes they're not even in the country, where they'll be asking to link my network. And I can tell right off the bat that it has nothing to do with me, right? It has to do with that individual trying to extract information from me
Mhm.
in order to grow their network. And that's not the kind of networking that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's
There's a there's an element where sometimes we use the word karma negatively, and we only use it negatively as some kind of a strange retaliation for something bad you've done in the past.
Mhm.
But that's not the truth of the word. There's also positive karma, where you're putting out that gratitude, as you know, and like I said, my favorite cheerleader of pharmacy, and you're taking that positive perspective, and then it's returned positively. And that's what networking really does for you, is the idea of saying, I'm putting myself out there in a positive fashion, and then those folks are going to respond back to me in a positive fashion. And like I said, I argue for diversity, so that it is not just folks inside your industry, that it's a potential future industry or a past industry, and you keep adding and adding to that network, so that you're seeing a great deal of information from all of them, and you also have those long-term contacts to be able to say, wow, I can make movement.
And back to this article that we found on LinkedIn, the tips that they've suggested follow along what Kevin and I were just talking about. It says, if you're not sure how to get started in networking, here's a few tips. Number one, they said, was attend industry events. I love this because industry events for me is a celebration of the specific event in the sector, because most of our industry events really does drill down into a specific sector that's being served. And then preparing for that event is so important for me. So before I get to an event, I've reached out to organizations I know that are going to be there. I've scheduled opportunities for us to not only talk, but maybe even use them as part of the post show. But attending industry events is so important. Pharmacy students, your state representative or your state associations, your state pharmacy associations will have their annual event, but they'll also have regional events. I know that our own Pennsylvania Pharmacists Association had a Western Regional Exchange event that happened I think in like November of 2023, and then they just had their annual in February. In February, there was a record-setting number of pharmacy students that came to Harrisburg to go to the PPA, and that was so important to see the future of pharmacy attendees being there, and how important it is for their networking to be there, and to not only network with their fellow students and peers, but even people in the profession, as well as the industry events that take place.
And the next time you're on that Zoom call and you hear, you know, a colleague that may be far away or very close, that's a moment to write down their name and go type it in a LinkedIn, and you know, search them, see if they have a profile, tell them how you're a like-minded person that you were listening to during that call, and just said, I wanted to have a long-term connection with you. Those simple little things, in addition to the idea that it can make that Zoom call a little bit more pleasant to go through, you're also pushing yourself into that networking perspective.
This next one says, join professional organizations. Very important. So other conferences that we're going to be touching on, but if you're in specialty pharmacy, the NASP, the National Association of Specialty Pharmacies, really have inside of each of these organizations, they have components for new practitioners, pharmacy students, people that have been around, collaborations. They do that on purpose so that you can get the most out of being part of those organizations or participating in those organizations. This next one says connect with people on social media. That's what we were talking about. It's so funny, Kevin. I use different social media platforms for different kind of interaction. I reserve my personal Facebook for nothing but maybe staying in touch with some high school people. But then it's more about sharing family events. It's about networking with our community here in Brownsville, Pennsylvania. It's more personalized, whereas my LinkedIn is strictly used for
It's 100%
B2B, business to business.
Yeah.
There's another element here that says do your research. Before you attend an event or connect with someone on social media, take some time to learn about their background. That's the give that I'm talking about. When I say give, I didn't mean like have to give them something physical or money or anything. I'm talking about respect or being prepared, knowing what their background is. Because as soon as you start a conversation, I know when I have preface conversations with prospects that turn clients, I already know what that marketing director's background is. I use it in my opening where I'll say something like, hey, you've been in pharmacy now for 3 years, but what was things like at JCPenney as public relations director for we actually just talked to somebody yesterday that actually had that exact scenario. That opened up a whole other level of trust in our conversation to build rapport and showing the fact that I cared enough about you to look up what else was happening in your professional life before I move forward.
And why I argue that as you meet people, professionally over time, don't just focus on people inside your current workplace and industry or colleagues within your organization. Stretch yourself, because you never know when they're going to move from an organization like JCPenney's over to a pharmaceutical organization.
Exactly. It says, be prepared to talk about yourself. So this might sound easier than doing it, but we have a lot of pharmacists who are nerds like me who may be introverted and they haven't really prepared. So think about your resume, think about your CV, think about your accomplishments, things that you've wrote. That's why I'm always encouraging pharmacy students when I meet them. Have you started blogging? Even if it's not a public blog, even if it's a journal just for yourself, writing is very important. And I think it's a piece of good networking, because if you write something down to prepare what you're going to say, as almost like that quick, I have less than 3 minutes, or they say actually less than seconds to make a first impression, but you have something structured. So make sure you have a clear, concise story about you to highlight your skills, your experiences, maybe mentioning some awards that you've won, but also remember that it's not about you. It's about a combination of at least 2 people in the word networking. Like if you looked up the definition of networking, it's not a one person thing. It's a minimum of 2 people thing. And it creates an opportunity for an impression to do something later, maybe in your career, that could be business development, new career, a new collaboration. How many physicians do pharmacists that want to go into consulting? How many physicians are in your network? How many are you reaching out to saying, hey, I was thinking about you and I wanted to send you this article on hyperlipidemia, and I knew that you were a specialist in this blood disorder, so I wanted you to read this. I mean, that means, number one, that you're thinking about them, and number two, that you thought that this piece of content would have been an interest to them. And that's where also blogging and podcasting comes in too.
And it doesn't matter if you're 27 and just getting started, or whether you're 47 and getting started. There's a sincerity in the transparency of saying, I'm just getting started in networking. I've been really focused on my career, and I think now it's time to spread my wings and start meeting people in the industry. Don't be afraid of that kind of transparency either.
Absolutely. This next one says to be a good listener. I think this is more important than being prepared to talk about yourself, because being able to listen to who you're talking with will give you little bits of information that you can act on later that can really help to grow your network. And then follow up. After you meet someone, make sure it's not the first time that you've connected with them. Make sure that you have an opportunity to, go to that next level, whether that's, hey, are you going to be at the APHA? Meet me there. or reach out to them. And I don't how many people exercise their networks to be able to cultivate something with whether that be collaboration or a future opportunity for a position or a job. But networking is such an important skill. I can't emphasize how important it is, and it's really not a part of pharmacy school per se, but it definitely should be something that every pharmacy student is saying. And once you hit that P3 level, it's kind of it's time to activate your network growing capabilities and move forward.
And be honest with yourself that it is in fact practice, and you're going to have false starts and you're going to have amazing successes, and both are going to be included.
All right, networking and conferences. Let's talk about conferences because the Pharmacy Podcast Network will be going to the Pharmacy Profit Summit live. We've been to every Profit Summit that Dr. Lisa Fast has done. Lisa has been on the Pharmacy 50 most influential list for, I want to say, 2 or 3 years in a row, which is just amazing, showing that her peers respect what she's doing in community pharmacy, specifically in the business of pharmacy. The Profit Summit 2024 is on March 10th through 11th, and it's going to be in Dallas at the Dallas Omni, and it's going to be packed with people that are going to be sharing with pharmacy owners how to do better in your business, how to grow your business, and what kind of tools, cash-based programs that you can be implementing to be able to do more than just filling a prescription and relying on the revenue that comes from that prescription fee and processing fee to do more that's a little bit more active within your pharmacy. So a shout out to the Pharmacy Profit Summit. Take a look at pharmacyprofitsummit.com. Once again, that's pharmacyprofitsummit.com. I'm excited to be going to this. If you are going to this and you want to connect with myself, and I think Brady might be going with us, I'm not sure. Kevin, that's not one that you're going to. You're actually going to the APHA, which is the next one we want to talk about. Unleashing the power inside you. That is so important to be representing your stake in pharmacy and your position in pharmacy. APHA is a supercharged event. We're always excited to be back. It'll be in Orlando, Florida. This Week in Pharmacy, Locked on Pharmacy will be there. It's their podcast. We'll be running their podcast for them in the APHA booth. So if you are going to APHA 2024, please make time to come over to the APHA's experience zone and see us. We're excited to be there. And Kevin, I think this will be your first APHA. So
My first
excited
APHA.
that you're going to go.
Yeah, very excited.
Yeah.
Can't wait to meet everyone.
That's right. Take a look at aphameeting.pharmacist.com. Once again, that's aphameeting.pharmacist.com. And if you're going, please let us know that you are going. It's important, once again, for us to, there's that word, network, when we're there, and just learn about what you're doing. Learn about what you're doing in pharmacy that's making a difference in pharmacy care. I know that we will have access to the board of directors as well as some of the speakers, but I want access to people that are listening. So if you're going to that conference in Orlando, end of March, coming up fast, please connect with Pharmacy Podcast Network. Let us know how we can help you expand what you do. What are you doing in pharmacy? What are you doing in healthcare to make a difference? I have met so many pharmacists, Kevin, that are not practicing as traditional pharmacists, but they're using their PharmD to interconnect with people based on the respect that it drives, especially other providers that might be helped. And I think of Christina Fontana, who is a business coach, and she's a transformation coach for business professionals. She leans more to helping women, but she's been helping men as well as businesses. She's the author of Moving Beyond the Counter, which is a book that she released, and I got to write the preface to it. So it's the first I've ever been published, and it was a wonderful book to participate. But the reason why I'm mentioning her specifically is she has used her network as the primary way of growing her business. And that really ties back into the importance of, she started building her network back when she was in pharmacy school
Yes.
at St. John's. And so it goes to show you that Christina was a traditional pharmacist. She worked in a chain pharmacy. She worked for Walgreens for some time. Then she was doing some consulting. And then she started growing this business, this idea of what she wanted to do as a transformational coach. And now she relies strictly on her network to help her develop leads and develop ways of interconnecting with people that would use her resources. And that's the future of our entrepreneurial pharmacist, is where are you going to make that transition from, if you wanted to leave traditional pharmacy, how are you going to do it? And it comes down to your network.
And always remember, when at the APHA, Todd will often have a microphone in front of him, and I will not. I'll be standing right nearby. And I'm always looking for those next podcast hosts, the next clients who support our efforts, the next sponsors. Please make sure that you seek me out, and so that we can start that relationship and move forward for not just 24, but also for 2025.
Absolutely. Also want to give a shout out to the Pharmacy Podcast Network and our wonderful content developers. We had an episode come out with Katrina Azur this week. She is the host of Farm Excel, and she has an episode that says, "Your career, your way." And guess what? She talks about networking inside this episode. What do you know?
What do you know? It's almost like we had a plan today.
We had a plan. I want to give a shout out to Dr. H, Dr. Hussein, with his episode, Unconventional Treatments, and just his conversation with Pamela Smith and journey as an LDN. This is an extremely important episode for us because I love hearing about how pharmacists are building collaborations with other providers, and what they're doing for patient health, and what they're doing to demystify healthcare for patients, and how important those collaborations are. Also, if you didn't get to hear TWIRx last week, we did an interview with Dr. Colin Banis, who's the Chief Medical Officer of Dr. First. And it was so interesting to talk with him and get an intel report update from Dr. First. And then I was so fascinated by the conversation we had with Dr. Christopher McCurdy. If you haven't listened to this episode on Kratom, I don't know if you know what Kratom is. If you do want to understand it, he really does a deep dive clinical dissection of everything that he knew as fast as he could get it out in 25, 30 minutes about Kratom. And I still don't know enough about it to really speak intelligently, nor am I a pharmacist or a physician. So that's why I have great guests like Dr. McCurdy come on this week in pharmacy. Also, a shout out to Marina Buskov. Dr. Buskov does the Holistic Pharmacy podcast. It's been very popular. It's been growing. And she is doing an episode. It says Disrupting Disease with Essential Oils with Tammy Davis. And we've received feedback on the Holistic Pharmacy podcast as a starting point to grow into a functional delivery of patients that you serve, not only in your community, but even if you're in a long-term care setting. And is there other things that you can supplement treatments with a holistic or a functional pharmacy approach or medication approach? So a shout out to our hosts. Kevin, you are going to really be helping us cultivate and expand upon how we leverage our hosts to deliver more messaging through the network, not only in Pharmacy Podcast Network land, but also some of the clients that are developing relationships with pharma, developing relationship with technology companies. You know, we are based on podcasting primarily as our output, but that is just the tipping. That's just the tip of our iceberg. We have so much that we want to share.
And I promise all the listeners and viewers that I'll work his butt off.
I know you will. I know you will. I want to give a shout out to pharmacists out there, pharmacy technicians out there, how much we care about and we think about you always. If there's anything that we can do, please let my team know. You can reach out to us at publisher@pharmacypodcast.com or Kevin's email, Jones, Jones, Jones@pharmacypodcast.com. This has been a wonderful TWIRx to share with you, Kevin. I thank you for being my co-host today.
Always a pleasure.
And I want to give a shout out to our listeners. Thank you for listening This Week in Pharmacy. We cannot wait to talk to you and talk with you next week. We'll see you next week.